The old house stood on a hill overlooking the town. It was a looming presence, dark and silent. People called it Hollow Grove. No one dared to go near it. Legend said that Hollow Grove was haunted. People whispered of strange lights and sounds coming from the house. Some said that shadows danced in the windows at night. The story went that a family had once lived in Hollow Grove. One night, something terrible happened there. The family vanished without a trace. Some said they were murdered. Others said they were taken by evil spirits. No one knew for sure what happened that night, but everyone knew that Hollow Grove was a place to be feared. It was Halloween night. A group of friends stood at the edge of the woods, staring up at the old house. They were young and reckless. They didn't believe the stories about Hollow Grove. "I dare you to go in," Ryan said. He nudged his friend Jake. Jake hesitated. He looked at the house. It seemed to be watching him with empty eyes. "Scared?" Ryan taunted. Jake took a deep breath. "No," he said. "Let's go." The friends walked up the hill toward the house. The wind howled through the trees like a mournful cry. The closer they got, the colder it seemed to get. They reached the front porch. The paint was peeling, the wood was rotten. Jake reached out and tried the doorknob. It turned with a groan. The door creaked open. The air inside the house was cold and damp. It smelled like dust and decay. The friends stepped inside, their eyes adjusting to the darkness. "Hello?" Sarah called out. Her voice echoed through the empty hall. There was no answer, only the sound of their own breathing. They moved cautiously through the house. They found cobwebs in every corner and dust on every surface. The furniture was old and rotting. The wallpaper was peeling off the walls. "Let's check out the basement," Mike whispered. He pointed to a door at the end of the hall. They crept down the stairs. The air grew colder and damper. The whispers started. They were faint at first, just a rustling sound, like leaves blowing in the wind. But as the friends descended deeper into the basement, the whispers grew louder. The basement was dark and damp. The friends huddled together, their flashlights casting dancing beams of light on the stone walls. The whispers seemed to be coming from everywhere at once. "This is creepy," whispered Sarah. Her voice trembled. Suddenly the whispers grew louder. The shadows on the walls began to move. They twisted and turned, taking on strange and menacing shapes. The shadows detached themselves from the walls. They swirled and coalesced, forming into dark, shadowy figures with hollow, empty eyes. The friends gasped in terror. "Run!" Jake shouted. He turned and ran for the stairs, the others right behind him, but it was too late. The shadows blocked their way. The figures lunged. The door slammed shut. The friends were trapped. Panic surged through the friends. They were trapped in the basement with the shadowy figures closing in. The whispers intensified, taunting them, their words laced with malice. "Let us out!" Sarah screamed, pounding on the door. But the door wouldn't budge. It was as if it was sealed shut by an unseen force. The shadows were upon them. Their cold, ethereal touch sent shivers down their spines. The figures were relentless, their hollow eyes burning with an eerie light. "We're trapped!" Mike cried, his voice cracking with fear. Jake pushed Sarah behind him, trying to shield her. He knew they had to do something, but what? These weren't ordinary shadows. They were something else, something evil. Desperation clawed at Jake. He looked around the basement, his heart pounding in his chest. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to fight back. His eyes fell on an old lantern lying on a dusty shelf. It was dented and cobwebbed, but it looked intact, and beside it lay a crumpled piece of paper. He snatched up the lantern and the paper. Unfolding the paper, he saw faded ink forming words. It was a chant, and beneath it, a warning. "The shadows fear the light. The chant will set them free." Hope flickered in Jake's chest. This was it. This was their chance. He showed the paper to his friends. "This could be our way out," he said, his voice filled with urgency. He grabbed Mike. "Help me with the lantern." While Jake and Mike fumbled with the lantern, trying to get it lit, Sarah started to recite the chant. The words felt strange in her mouth, ancient and powerful. As she spoke, the shadows seemed to hesitate. Their movements slowed. Their hollow eyes flickered. Suddenly, the lantern sputtered and came to life. The basement was bathed in a warm, golden light. The shadows recoiled from the light, hissing and swirling. "Louder, Sarah," Jake yelled. "Keep chanting." Sarah took a deep breath and continued the chant. Her voice grew stronger, more confident. The light from the lantern intensified, pushing back the shadows. The shadowy figures writhed and twisted in the light. Their forms flickered, as if struggling to hold their shape. As Sarah finished the last word of the chant, the shadows let out a deafening shriek. They dissolved into wisps of black smoke, swirling and fading until they were gone. The basement was silent. The only sound was the ragged breathing of the teenagers. The door creaked open. Standing in the doorway was the old caretaker of the town cemetery, his face etched with worry. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gruff but kind. Jake, Sarah and Mike stumbled out of the basement, blinking in the sudden light. They had never been so happy to see the light of day. "What were those things?" Mike asked, his voice trembling. The caretaker sighed. "Lost souls," he said, "trapped here for years. They feed on fear." He looked at them, his eyes filled with sadness. "You were lucky," he said. "You found the chant." News of the teenagers' encounter spread through the town like wildfire. The legend of Hollow Grove, once just a spooky story, took on a new meaning. People started leaving offerings at the edge of the property, tokens of peace for the lost souls. The whispers, though still present, seemed less menacing, more mournful. The town rallied around the teenagers, praising their bravery. But Jake, Sarah and Mike knew they had been lucky. They had stared into the face of darkness and lived to tell the tale. The experience changed them. It opened their eyes to the unseen world, the world that existed just beyond the veil of their everyday lives. They understood now that some places held a darkness that couldn't be explained, only respected. And some stories, no matter how terrifying, held a kernel of truth. Years passed. The friends grew older, but they never forgot their Halloween night at Hollow Grove. The old house remained, a constant reminder of the town's haunted history. The legend of Hollow Grove lived on, passed down from generation to generation. But it was no longer a tale told to frighten. It was a story of courage, of hope, and of the enduring power of the human spirit. And every Halloween, as the veil between worlds thinned, the townsfolk of Hollow Creek would remember the teenagers who faced their fears and freed the lost souls. They would remember the chant that brought light to the darkness, and they would remember the whispering shadows of Hollow Grove.